Welcome to our 30th session of Elevate Your Wellbeing Contagious Care. And this is a different day, Thursday, rather than Tuesday, just a once-off thing because we couldn't do Tuesday. But it's hard to believe it's been 4 months, 4 whole months since we started these sessions, and so number 30, it's worthy of celebrating today. You know, when we started, I, like you, were probably thinking, oh, COVID will be over in a few months, but it's certainly well and truly not over. And instead of being a sprint like we thought it might be, it's been well and truly a marathon. So please let us know who you are coming in, just checking in today. Give us a hi, let us know how you are feeling today. An actual descriptive word, how you're feeling right now. Hi David, welcome. And let us know, just in one feeling word, how you're going today. Louise, welcome to you as well. So instead of being a sprint, it has been a marathon, but it's been a vastly different type of marathon to what we're used to, because not that we're used to marathons. Well, I'm certainly not. But we don't know what the finish line is. True. We don't know where the finish line is. And we're still navigating our way around how to get to the finishing line. So we're striving towards the finish line, but we don't know where it is. So we push on daily towards the goal, but without having a real full understanding of what the goal looks like and when it's going to be achieved. That's tricky. So COVID challenges are going on and the future remains uncertain. And that's why we've devoted this session to looking at coping with COVID, how our personalities can help a crisis situation, how they can be good in a crisis, but also how they can hinder an ongoing crisis. So, you know, with this lockdown, one moment we'll be coasting along and the next we are locked down, Victoria being locked down, areas of Sydney now being locked down. And it's having the border closed, not being able to see our friends. We can't see our son who's in Victoria. So there's many different life adversities. What can we do to make an opportunity of those adversities? Hello, Musha Rukmani. It's so good to have you from Victoria, and we really feel for you through this time. And Kristen, hi to you as well. I'm just going down here. Hi, Alison from America. Hi, Thomas. Hi, my friend. Cheers. How a fabulous duo. Thank you, Alison. And Margaret, welcome to you. Hi, and energized. You're feeling energized after Aqua. Fantastic. And welcome, Rebecca. So how are you feeling? Just use a descriptive word right now. How are you feeling as we push through COVID, or how are you just feeling today? So there's been many life-changing events as we navigate our way through this with confined proximity to our loved ones. But we're recognizing, John and I have always recognized how different personalities actually affect situations, because we have virtually the opposite of personalities in most areas. And we're celebrating 40 years at the end of this year, being married, still sticking together. But it's a challenge looking at how we can make our different personalities work towards something that we want to achieve. And particularly in this situation, it's how our different personalities can work together for good to bring the best situation out of this ongoing crisis. And in many ways, being closely confined or in close proximity, whether it's through homeschooling, working from home, our core attitudes, we've got similar attitudes. Actually, No, we've got different attitudes as well with many things. But our personalities, our temperaments can conflict more when we're in close proximity. So it can bring out the worst of us in a ongoing crisis. So we want to see our personalities, accept them rather than just seeing them in stark contrast to each other. So what have been the challenges you've experienced having a different personality to somebody you're living with in real close proximity? Just put it in the chat box. What have been some challenges you've experienced? So I just want to say hi and welcome to Brad's here too with Alison. Welcome Renee from the States also, and Pam from just around the corner. Hello to you all. Now, in one of my initial episodes, I talked about how extroverts are really struggling through COVID because I'll say we, because I'm more an extrovert than an introvert. I'm probably about 70-30. And we get our energy externally from friendships, from meeting together, being around people. And so for extreme extroverts, I'm thankful I'm not an extreme extrovert, that I like my introversion, my space, and enjoying my own company as well. But if you're extreme, you would be feeling really depleted right now. Your energy is not being utilized to the full when you're on your own so much. Whereas introverts think they've woken up in heaven right now through COVID because they enjoy reflecting on their inner thoughts till the cows come home. They can read books and be creative and do all those things without having to go out to meetings, without having to be with people. They don't need to worry about extroverts taking up airtime or forcing themselves to socialize when they really don't want to. Each of us has different ways of coping, hey? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and much of that's related to the type of personality we are. And many of us had our learned ways of coping coming from messages from the family we've grown up in, yeah? Or modeling from significant adult relationships in the past. So what is it for you? I'm hearing from you, Pam, very frustrating not being able to be with people while Ian is loving it. Yes, opposites often attract. And hi, Annie, welcome to you. So put in the chat box how you are experiencing COVID right now.
Now, people sometimes say to me, what personality type are you? And I guess I'd normally respond by saying the best type. I'm normal. So whatever I am is the appropriate personality to have. But as you can see from Heather's reaction, she doesn't quite see the fact that I'm normal. But each of us seem to think the way we are is the way the world is and the way that normality is. So let's state right at the start, there's no right or wrong with what personality you are. There's no right or wrong with what type of family you came from or what is your characteristic way of relating to other people. But extremes on either side can be a big problem. Now, we must acknowledge that types of families change during the life cycle of families. And also, sometimes we bring all the characteristics of our family into our relationship, into our personality. Sometimes we'd go the exact opposite. We say we're never going to be like that. We're going to be the exact opposite of the family we've been brought up with. But so let's have a look at some of the different types of characteristics of families. And as we show you these different types of family backgrounds, start reflecting on where does your personality fit on the continuum. Let's have a look.
And while you get this out, Rebecca's saying, COVID does scare me. My hubby and I have many differences, but he's an essential worker, so that really helps. And Christine Clare, thanks for coming on, Christine. You're going to enjoy this when we're talking about family of origin, our dear daughter. Hey.
That's right. So let's have a look at our first types of families, which is the affectionate and reserved types. Now, some families are really warm and huggy. They greet with kisses and hugs. They sit on each other's laps. They talk loud. They talk over each other. They're welcoming. They touch while they talk. They show love physically. Just remember that movie, My Big Fat Greek Wedding, and just imagine just the warmth and just the connectedness that the people had as a group. Very, very touchy-feely. But other families are much more reserved. They would say hello with perhaps a handshake and be quite standoffish in comparison. And you can relate to that difference?
Yes, I can remember, your dad, when I first came into your family, hugging your dad was like hugging a soldier at attention, and he didn't move, and I could see, my goodness, he is really anxious about hugging.
Yes.
And this is when we're really serious. It wasn't just
the
early days.
in,
It was and so it stayed that way, and so I knew I needed to restrict my hugs for him just so he could feel comfortable. And even though it was weird hugging your mum, I'd just kind of like brush near your dad, knowing that a hug was not going to help him feel comfortable. So I didn't want to make him uncomfortable. So I had to adapt. Yeah. So you've come from a really reserved family, and
it was such a joy for you when my dad actually hugged back. It took maybe 3 or 4 years.
Yes. It was actually before the wedding, which was so nice.
Okay, just before the wedding, he actually was not initiating the hug. He actually responded to it.
Yes. But I've got to introduce, just got to move towards hugging more. And the day he initiated the hug, I'll never forget it. I remember where we were, what type of weather it was, everything.
That's right.
Yeah. So people are so extraordinarily different.
So I had quite a reserved family with affection, whereas your family was much more open with hugs and such.
Yes. So the difference for us in this, just looking at our differentness and finding a way to modify for that comfortableness and leaning in gently can be a challenge.
Yes.
Yep.
A challenge we found. So just imagine if you're a huggy, affectionate type of person with your personality in the family you've come from, just imagine how COVID's affecting you. That you can no longer hug people, you can't go up to people. The warm touch and kisses are replaced by sort of a shimmy hug or sort of an elbow touch or a foot tap or something like that. Just imagine how your emotional tank of physical connections are being drained through the whole process. But then for people that are more on the reserve side of things, this is a fantastic thing because, the issue with reserved people, say with social kissing, who initiates the kiss? Do you kiss on one side? Do you kiss on both sides? How do you know who to kiss, who not to kiss? So if you're reserved now, it's a joy in COVID. You can just wave to somebody or, you don't have to worry about all this sort of getting up close and personal with other people. Yeah. And it's even translated through the GP land. In the olden days, like last year, I'd actually shake hands with people and say hello and sort of tap them on the shoulder or be a bit warm to them as a greeting. Whereas now I do sort of just a friendly nod. I do a little namaste greeting or something to them without having any connection whatsoever.
So how do you fit on the continuum here with being affectionate this way and reserved this way? Or say, let's look at it this way. On a scale of 0 to 10, where would you be if affection is 10 and reserved is 0? Where do you fit in on that continuum? And the person who you live with, if you are living with somebody, where do they fit and what differences do you notice as you go through COVID? And if you're living on your own, who are the closest person to you? So just put in the chat box what differences you notice with being different on that continuum. Now we're going to look at another continuum now, and that is the perfectionist versus the non-perfectionist, okay, on that continuum. So being a person of perfection is, it's kind of like the motto, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing properly, and 100% properly. You're not allowed to make any mistakes, okay? You could eat a meal off my kitchen floor, not mine, but for some people, like my mother, Sasha does keep it clean. My mum wouldn't be impressed. But if you were my mother, you would be 100% clean and putting a lot of effort into that. So and tidiness, a place for everything and everything in its place. That would be your motto. Whereas the non-perfectionist, the motto would kind of be like, near enough is good enough, or my house is clean enough to be healthy, but dirty enough to be happy. My dad gave me that actual sign to put up on a lovely little plaque, which was a bit cheeky of him because I know he was saying, hey, I'm with you. Like I'm accepting you as you are, Heather. And it was really cute rather than saying you have to be like mum. So, we're all different. And my mum did love to have things super clean and super tidy.
Yes, I remember when Heather was growing up, the whole time she was growing up, her mother gave her messages that she was the most untidy person in the world and how amazing this was and how incredibly disgusting it was, pretty much. And so Heather went from being the most messy person in the world.
By perception
Your perception,
of me.
that's right. And then she did meet the most messy person in the world, which was me.
So that was a challenge for my mother to begin with. And mind you, in our first year of marriage, it was a great challenge for me too.
True, yes.
Our perception of who we are is often determined by the family that we were raised in and how they do things. And it wasn't until I was an exchange student in the States and lived with 3 different families over that year that I went in my perception of me from being the untidiest person in the world to believing now through observation in that year, I thought, my gosh, I'm pretty average. I lived with a family that was way untidier than me, and then one family that was average with me, and then another family that was slightly tidier than me. But our perception changes over the years as we get more comfortable with how we have moving away from the way we might have rigidly been led to believe from our parents. So there were a number of incidences I remember in my teenage years when I thought to myself, I'm certainly not going to become like that. So perfectionist, so rigid in how things should be. Because I saw the rigidity and the pressure and tension that caused in relationships where perfection was so overrated at the expense of the valuing of other important values that I saw as higher. Remember, there's no necessarily right or wrong in this. It's what you find most helpful, but not putting that on to other people. So I longed for acceptance and a valuing of relationship over having to get things right. And I found that perfectionism really I just found it quite unhelpful to my soul. So on a scale of 10, with 1 being non-perfectionism and 10 being perfectionism, how were you raised? Okay, just put that in the chat box, and then where would you put yourself now on that scale? So 2 questions, just jot that in the chat box. Let's have a look at what you've been writing. Amanda, hi and welcome, and Dawn, welcome also, and Rachel, looking forward to hearing your answers to this. And Mitchell, lovely to see you, Mitchell. And Annie, 10 with family, but more likely 5 outside the family. And David Gross, how lovely to see you as well. So Amanda saying hi, and Margaret saying I'm 9 with close loved ones, but I try to respect others' responses. That's a really important response. Thanks, Margaret. And Pam saying I am by nature messy, but as I've gotten older, I like things more organized, but Ian is always neat and tidy and a perfectionist. So it's helpful to understand where we are on this scale. For people who are perfectionist, on the perfectionist end of the spectrum, and keep putting your responses in, because that helps us to know where to gauge this. So for people who are on the perfectionist end, it can be a real struggle with COVID, because there are so many things that we just cannot control with COVID. Perhaps this explains the sudden panic buying on toilet paper, because that was the one thing people felt like they did have control over, getting something, even though it was toilet paper. I was hoarding dark chocolate rather than toilet paper, but that's another issue. But in an uncertain world, there's one thing in life, if you can control it, you will go to that straight away when you feel like you're out of control with so many other things. Because perfectionism, huge, high levels of perfectionism on a 10 or 9 or 10, it can cause stress in relationships, because a perfectionist thinks the non-perfectionist is too relaxed, too laid back, particularly with COVID and the risk of infections. They see them as not taking, the perfectionists will see the non-perfectionists as not taking things as seriously enough and what they would wish to happen. So how does your personality help you and your loved ones through COVID? And how might it hinder on this spectrum of perfectionism versus non-perfectionism? What can you do about it? Okay, think about that for a moment as we look at this. So Rachel is saying, hi, me growing up wasn't perfectionism at all, but now you are more so. David is saying 8.973. I love it, David. But I'm stressing because I'm not sure if I got that correct or not. Good on you, mate. Takes my brother to crack a good one. One parent was a perfectionist and the other wasn't. Dawn is saying, I'm the messy one, but I was raised as a perfectionist. So you've gone the opposite way. Now you're about an average, around 5. You sound similar to me, Dawn. So I love that. Amanda's saying that I'm the ideal woman and ideal hostess, loves perfection. Oh, the ideal woman loves perfection, especially for hosting visitors, but it's great to let go and be in the flow. Great advice there. Okay, so thank you for putting your responses in. Hi, Anna, and welcome to you too. So for people who are, I've said this can be a real problem. So what can you do about your personality where you are on the spectrum? What can you do about it? If you want to modify it, how do you want to do that if it's hindering you and your primary relationships right now? I'd suggest there's 4 action steps that came to my mind as I was thinking about this morning. And one is, understand your differences, okay? Accept that this is you for now, but how do you want to modify them to make it a better place in your home or in your community, how you respond to people? Talk about your differences. That's a huge thing, a second step that you might want to take action on, to actually express your differences with your partner and your children and how they're coping right now, just like John and I have now. Reflect on how you might be able to modify yourself for the greater good. That's action step 3. And a 4th one is, how can you lean in towards harmony here? How can we lean in towards unity and harmony? So let's look at the next one, the next spectrum.
So the next one is confronters and withdrawers. Now, Heather came from a family that expressed a full range of emotions, and I came from a family that I'd never heard my parents argue. So as you can imagine, that it was a bit of a transition for us, the first year of marriage, wasn't it?
Yeah, when you said that, I can remember that I was just in disbelief. How could you not hear your parents just have a simple little argument when you've lived with them for so long? So I thought, maybe you've had amnesia. All the stress of studying medicine. I thought, it's giving you amnesia on the past. And so I went and checked out with your siblings, and sure enough, they all had amnesia as well. No, your parents really did not. They were so reserved. They probably didn't, and very similar. They probably didn't have a lot of differences in their relationship at the start, but so reserved with their emotions and not having a full range expressed. They would have had a full range. I'm given I'm acknowledging that with everyone, but whether you have a full range that you tend to express is a different matter.
And so when we had our first argument, you raised your voice, I thought the wheels had fallen off. I thought, what have I got into here? People don't argue in marriage, that's... obviously,
you thinking we're heading for disaster.
I thought there's something terrible happening here.
And meanwhile, I was wondering why you were hiding in the cupboard.
Exactly, till things quieten down. Precisely.
So it was just a whole new experience, us being on opposite ends of the continuum, as we are with all of these spectrums except one. We'll come to that in a minute. So, yeah, how are you? Margaret's saying, I'm certainly like you, Heather, after my caring but perfectionist family upbringing. Yes, it was caring but perfectionist. I actually bought the same sign that your dad gave you. Lovely. Yes, it's a helpful sign, isn't it? And Rebecca, we can both be withdrawers, you and John. Yes, okay. So put it in the chat box where you are on this continuum, remembering there's no judgment here. It's understanding that we're all just different. So, my parents argued, but it was respectful. There was never any name calling, never any form of abuse at all. But when they had an argument, it would just be a raised voice, no swearing. So I felt really safe, really safe the whole time as a child, under the umbrella of their love, even though that, argument, there was raising of voices.
Whereas I had a message from my family that you sorted things out logically, and that to raise your voice was to suggest that you'd lost control and that you weren't sort of getting your message across.
Yes.
Yeah, you were desperate type thing.
Yes. Yeah. And so I knew that was, as we worked through all our differences in the early years of our marriage, I knew that I was a pursuer, often in relationships. There's in majority of relationships, I hate to say it, but it's Murphy's Law, there will most often be one who is more of a confronter, wanting to deal with the situation at hand and to deal with it as soon as possible, and another one who withdraws at all costs or some costs, because of fear of what could happen in addressing the conflict. So there are more likely, most relationships have a pursuer and a withdrawer in that dance within the relationship. And so the more we pursue, our partner will be more likely to withdraw if that's the situation. And so that dance becomes really ingrained, and it's not a helpful dance. You're treading on each other's toes the whole time. It's really unconstructive, because the person who feels that they need to deal with the conflict as soon as possible, when you're calm after you've taken time out, there comes a time where you feel the other person doesn't want to come in to the relationship to do that. And then you feel, you can feel levels of rejection in not wanting to, or neglected, not wanting to address the situation. But for you, as a withdrawer, tell us how it is for you.
Well, for me as a withdrawer, it's a security, trying to escape from the situation. But the challenge is that there's only so much withdrawing you can do. You've still got to face it eventually.
Yeah.
And I guess the challenge in COVID is the fact that sometimes there's not many places you can withdraw to. You can't sort of go to work, you're working from home, you can't take the kids to school because sometimes they're homeschooled, you can't even go out and shop or do things normally with your buddies, so you're sort of trapped a bit more. So for people who are withdrawers, they really struggle in COVID because there's very limited places they can withdraw to.
Yeah.
And that becomes a big issue in this dynamic.
And then the more withdrawal that you do, that the withdrawer does, it can become unrecognised stone walling, where you're actually building up stones on those walls without realising it. And so it does take the withdrawer to step up and to say, hey, I'm not feeling comfortable, but can we talk about, I want to lean in because I know you want to talk about it. And we both want to resolve it, but it's understanding each other's patterns that can be quite different. And for the pursuer, it's allowing more space for the withdrawer, giving them, you might just need a healthy 2 or 3 minutes space, which is very healthy for everyone to calm down. And sometimes 20 minutes space, a good walk around the block or a jog, whatever. But then it might not be enough time that your withdrawing partner needs. So to chat about that, when are you going to be at your best? To be able to come and put this on the table and for us to discuss it with soft music, glass of wine, whatever works for you. Yeah.
Okay.
So let's look at our next difference. Go for it, John. You can.
The next one is between organised and free-spirited. So with organised families, everything's planned in great detail. The holidays are booked a year in advance. There's like a sort of run chart of every hour of holidays. You're going to do this, and you're going to do this. This is going to happen, and this is going to happen. Yeah. Family members are all aware of what part they play in the family situation. And their family motto is, when you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Whereas the free-spirited people, they don't plan ahead. They fly by the seat of their pants. You all jump in the car for a holiday. Where would you like to go, kids? Let's be open and free about this. You don't book ahead. We'll just turn up and see what's going. So the family motto there is scheduling ahead takes the fun out of life.
Now, because of both of our jobs and kids and all their sport and activities and such, we've had to be fairly planful. So I guess
you've had to be with on-call.
Yes,
we've had very structured in the calendar.
Fairly structured in the calendar. And so this is the only spectrum we're actually quite close to being fairly organised with our lives.
Fairly similar.
Fairly similar.
Because we're both organised.
Both organised, that's right. So this works for us, this particular spectrum. But just imagine in COVID, these personality differences cause a lot of stress amongst relationships. Because if you imagine that you're an organised person, well, you do the research about COVID. You go on the website, you check how many people are allowed to a certain venue, how much is the distances between them, what's the rules in terms of how many people come around to your house, and you do all this research. Then you're up against these free-spirited people who don't plan ahead. They just turn up and just hope and see what happens. You know, they they sort of don't stop to think of other issues or whatever. They just turn up.
And I think intergenerationally, it's really brought that difference. I don't want to be stereotyped here, but just looking at generalizations, and of course, there's millions of exceptions to what I'm going to say right now, but our generation was trained to be more organised, just in the nature of having to be, because we didn't have mobile phones to be able to say, where are you? Or I'm running late. You know,
we don't have the fear of missing out issue when we were growing up, did we? We actually had to make plans and turn up.
Yes.
You couldn't change plans because you couldn't contact anyone.
That's right.
So
we were trained differently.
Yes.
In that culture, the generational culture that we had. Whereas now younger people can fly by the seat of their pants more and not make plans as much. And what that does with this difference of not being, or just being more free-spirited, it's flowed out onto COVID with younger people tending to think, well, it's not going to affect me, and therefore not realising the ramifications as much. I was just reading a newspaper article about this the other day, of how, you know, this is an intergenerational thing. So we need to be sensitive to it, but work out how we can still work together for the greater good in this ongoing crisis.
Okay. So Heather will show you what our next one is.
And it is enmeshed versus being distant. And this is our last one for today. And I'm heating up just talking about it.
Oh, gosh.
So family members always know what is happening in each other's lives if you're coming from an enmeshed family. Just jot in the chat box if you were really, really tight-knit and close in your family, if that was you. There's get-togethers for special events. It was like my big fat Greek wedding type of atmosphere or culture in your family. So for birthdays, anniversaries, graduations, everything was really tight-knit and everyone celebrated. There were frequent calls and letters. One married lady that you spoke or that you worked with, do you want to share about her family?
Someone I worked with who used to ring her mother up twice a day, brackets on work time, of course, and in the brackets, and then would also see her mum each day over the weekend. And that would be like an enmeshed, very closely connected relationship.
Yeah. And whereas distanced families are barely touching, they're kind of here rather than here, okay? They contact rarely, and if someone's not an organizer in the family, then things just don't happen. They wouldn't watch each other necessarily play sport or celebrate family successes as much, okay? So where were we in this?
Well, certainly my family was a lot more distanced. To give an example, that my parents never celebrated their birthdays. In fact, we were unaware of when their birthday was. So little fuss was made about it.
Yeah, you didn't even... I remember when I met you, it was when we were engaged or heading very seriously in the relationship, and I just asked when are your parents' birthdays.
I had no idea. And then you said, how old are your parents? And I said, they never tell me. They refused to say. My mum says 21, which seems a bit odd as I was ageing a bit. But and the only way we discovered was actually looking at their passports.
I said, if I'm coming into your family, I need to know where their
birthdays
are, just to be able to acknowledge that. And so you had to find it out on their passports.
That's right, when their birthdays
because you asked and they wouldn't tell
Exactly. And you
that was foreign to me.
And you did the same. You asked and they wouldn't tell you when their birthdays were. Yeah. But then as the years have gone by, they've actually slowly learnt to value the fact that you would give them cards and we'd sort of make a bit of a fuss and ring them up on their birthdays and things.
And even celebrating your mum's 60th and 70th birthday, she just loved that.
They loosened up into it.
Yeah. It was small, but she still invited friends, and it was just so lovely that to recognise, wow, she's come from this to this.
That's
it was just beautiful.
Yeah, so there certainly can be change that happens in people, can't there?
Yeah, definitely. And that's where there can be change in people. That's the encouraging thing, where we can just build and what type of relationship you want to have with your primary loved ones, to actually talk about it, to actually open up about it. So I'm just going to go over a few of your comments. Hi, Kathy. Rebecca's saying, I'm from a more distant family, but I'd like to be more enmeshed. And that's great, Rebecca, in acknowledging that, because when you acknowledge it, you can work towards it and work out how do you want to do that. Dawn's saying quite distant growing up, about 5, but closer now, about 7. And Rebecca's saying both Andrew and you are organised. So not knowing what we're going to do for our Christmas holidays is hard. I'd be about a 7.5 and Andrew 9. So you could see the differences. A balance to planning, Margaret's saying, and free-spirited has usually worked best in my family now in COVID. Where flexibility has helped cope with the ongoing changes that are occurring. And Anna's saying, my family's very distanced and we've never been close. People with close families are so blessed. Anna, that's gone.
Okay, well, thanks for that, Anna, because I'm just reflecting how hard it is during COVID. If you come from a meshed family that do everything together, spend all the time together, are so engaged in each other's lives, it's just such a huge change when you can't actually see people or travel. And, just the weekly family Zoom one just doesn't hack it from the meshed family. Whereas for a distance family, they don't really notice much change. Because it's interesting with my mum, she's in aged care in Epping now, and she's a very extreme extrovert. She has a middle...
Introvert.
Thank you. That's very true. That was very... you thought I was talking about someone else, didn't you? She's a very extreme introvert. She always has had her meals in a room. She keeps the door shut in case other people come in and sort of talk to her and distract her.
This is prior to COVID.
This is prior to COVID. Yeah. So we sort of joke as a family. She's had a lifetime of training to cope with this COVID isolation, because in many ways her life hasn't changed at all. And in some ways now we actually can see more of her because we can get the Zoom link-ups. The nurse can bring in the phone to her and we can talk to her FaceTime because she can't operate the phone herself.
Yes,
But
I mean, she would see the only difference she's experienced in COVID is that
less
she would
family
see
visits,
us.
That's right.
She's got less family visits
Yes.
now, which is a shame. Yeah.
So you can just imagine the difference it is for enmeshed families, how they would struggle so much with this.
It's massive for people. So thank you for sharing the differentness, what you've shared in particular, Anna. So, we've reflected today on the different types of personalities and also the different types of families that we've come from. And if you want to deep dive into this topic more and really explore how you can make a difference in the change and be the change that you want to see in creating your own family, especially if you're young parents, how you can create the family that you want to come with your partner and discard the things that weren't helpful from your family of origin, but to still celebrate the things that are helpful and bring them in. You can deep dive into that. We've done a CD on this, and you can go to my website, which is heathermcalpineconsulting.com, and the CD called Valuing Your Marriage really deep dives into this a whole lot further on how you can make a change in the creation of the family that you want to establish. But for now, you can see each personality type has its strengths and weaknesses in coping with COVID. So we need to learn that during this time, how we can lean in to the people that are different to us. How can we develop a deeper understanding of where they're coming from? Our challenge in the coming weeks, I challenge and encourage you, is to turn your weaknesses into growing edges. Let the obstacles that you see first as obstacles actually be a growing edge of you and a growing edge in the future for your relationships, so that we can mature as people and come out wiser and stronger in the post-COVID world. So we really want to be able to do that. And so I encourage you to just put in the chat box now what your challenge might be. What's one of the things, just the number one thing from this session that you have gotten out of it today that has resonated for you the most, that you want to take action on? The number one thing that you want to take action on from today, whatever spectrum you've chosen that you want to work on today, put that in the chat box, because by actually putting it in, you do a great service to yourself by actually noting it. That's the first step towards going forward. And you actually help others in this group. Remember, there's sometimes 340, 350 viewers on this. So you are helping the people who watch the replays as well. And for those who watch the replays, add things as well. And if you've got something out of this today, if it's been of value, share it with your friends so that they can get through this COVID time wiser and stronger. And what I'm doing for the next 2 Tuesdays, we're going back to Tuesdays, this was just a once-off, the next 2 Tuesdays, because mental health has been such an important thing and it's on the increase with such challenges that people are facing through COVID. I've invited 2 guest speakers in. So next Tuesday, Grant Witherington, he's from Brisbane, he's a colleague, and he'll be speaking on how to deal with maintaining your mental health through this ongoing crisis. And then I've got another colleague who you might remember from one of the earlier sessions, our first guest speaker, Kat Miller, is coming back again to talk on how we can deal with anxiety when it's risen through these COVID times. So until next week, I look forward to seeing you next week. Be strong, be wise, be life-giving, and let your life shine.
Okay.